So, morality. So, the Pali word for morality is what? All of you who have been practicing for a while will know it's called sila. All right, it's good to memorize this Pali word because it has a very broad scope. It can be used in a very general sense or in a specific way. Essentially, there are three levels of meaning. The first level is about inner quality, inner virtue, right? Qualities like kindness, contentment, truthfulness, and patience. Second level is about actions, actions of the body and speech, which express these inner qualities outwardly. We're talking here is about moral conduct. And thirdly, rules, okay. And thirdly, rules of conduct formulated to produce skillful actions of body and speech. Now, all three, okay, all three are interrelated. What's shown here includes moral principles and precepts commonly taught by the Buddha. Okay, now this is the Buddha Dhamma. To know Buddhism, you got to know everything, huh? But here, can you see how important morality plays a part? It is a very big topic. Okay, and there were many other themes presented here because the Dharma had to reach different individuals with different needs and objectives in life. We will not look at all the teachings on morality, only the central principles and a couple of well-known discourses. These will include some of the points already seen in the Dhamma bites on right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So it will be revision for some of you. Besides right speech, right action, and right livelihood, and the Vinaya, the Buddha also taught morality in terms of the 5 precepts and the other codes of conduct. So this section will help us to recognize these general principles of morality and where they fit in the whole scheme of the Buddha Dhamma, and how these different forms and levels of training are actually connected to one another. Now, number one, the topic on types and classification is useful to know because some people may be confused by all the various themes on morality that are found in the Pali Canon. Then we move on to talk about the structure of morality training. Now, the standard definition of moral factors in the Noble Eightfold Path deal with abstinence, the holding back, the abstinence from unskillful conduct. Why is the Buddha more concerned about avoiding evil than doing good? And why does avoiding evil always come first before doing good? We will address this under topic number 2. And for number 3, why does the training start with morality? Why is virtue needed for insight wisdom? And how are the 3 disciplines of morality, concentration, and wisdom interrelate to each other? And how are they interdependent? And lastly, we'll touch on, lastly, we'll touch on morality and karma. In Buddhism, the practice in morality is tied to karma. If we observe the moral rules of conduct, what can we expect in karmic returns? Not just in this life, but also in our rebirth destination and subsequent lives. And what happens if we break the precepts and the rules of conduct? And then lastly, we'll talk about practical applications. First, let's talk about types and classification. Okay. Now this is revision. Familiar? From here, the analysis of moral conduct branches out, depending on the way of life, right? The training objectives and the level of development. Okay. In the case of the Sangha, the Buddha described the training involved as such. Siu Yi or Sok Hun, can you all please read the next slide? When he has thus gone forth, his life, he lives restrained by the restraint of the patimokkha, possessed of proper behavior and resort. Having taken up the rules of training, he trains himself in them, seeing danger in the slightest fault. He comes to be endowed with wholesome bodily and verbal action. His livelihood is purified, and he is possessed of moral discipline. He guards the doors of his sense faculties, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension, and is content. Now, the patimokkha is the moral code in the Vinaya, which consists of 227 rules for monks and 311 rules for nuns. From these two paragraphs, you can see how strict the training is for monks and for nuns. It has to be this way, right, to enable them to benefit directly from the Dhamma and arrive at their destination of Nibbana in the best possible way. And the patimokkha, we have a very comprehensive set of rules and regulations serve this purpose. But the Noble Eightfold Path is not intended just for monastics. For the householders, the Buddha taught the moral conduct in other ways. We will look at three common themes. Let's us look at the 5 precepts first. Okay, we don't have 227 or 311. We have the 5 precepts. Okay, and later we also look at 10 wholesome courses of action and the 3 bases of meritorious deeds. Okay, so these, can you see, applies to us. So we lay people practice the 5 precepts. We all know this, right? We don't kill, we don't steal, not committing sexual misconduct, not using false speech, and not taking intoxicants that cause heedlessness. Almost all serious crimes stem from violation of these precepts. They appear very simple. They are actually very hard to maintain. That's why moral precepts are considered a skill set, because they involve continuous training, diligent practice, and lots of patience. Actually, the term Panchasila is not found in the suttas. During the Buddhist time, they were referred to as the 5 virtues, Panchadhamma, right? The 5 training rules, Sikkhapada. You can see here, they also referred to as the 5 great gifts, Dana, and the 5 bright qualities, Sukhadhamma. Sometimes they are mentioned without a heading. Only in the commentaries at the later text was this term, Panchasila, used. Now, let us start with abstinence from killing. Now, it is against the first precept, right, to kill and physically harm any living being, including oneself. Number 2, we should also not approve of, influence, or encourage killing and violence. Number 3, like all ethical actions, the karma from killing and violence results from the intention to act, and the resulting karma weight is also influenced by other factors like effort and the purity of the being killed or harmed. But the ultimate responsibility for the act of killing still lies with the mind. And because it is based on intention, no matter how compelling the reason, killing or violence always comes with a karmic burden, whether it is suicide, capital punishment, euthanasia, or simply killing for food. Number 2, this second precept. We do not take what has not been let go of, what is guarded, what is protected, what belongs to someone else. It also means not using deceit, force, or intimidation to take anything when it is not freely given, no matter how small in value. Violations of this precept includes shoplifting, looting, robbery, which is theft, which with use or threat of violence or intimidation, or identity theft like smuggling and money laundering, fraud like filing false insurance claims and dealing with counterfeit money. Or even something seemingly harmless like helping yourself to fruits in your neighbor's yard, or taking stationery back from the office without permission, and even cheating on our parking coupons. That are examples of violating the second precept. Okay. The third precept is this. Sexual misconduct usually points to adultery, but also includes any sexual action that is unskillful, improper, and does not conform to the Buddha's teachings on morality. For example, in the case of prostitution, it is unskillful when there is potential harm to the prostitute as well as client in the form of sexual diseases. It is unskillful if there is exploitation involved. It is still unskillful if the person visiting the prostitute is married. In essence, sexual misconduct carries with it the intention to do something to others that we do not want done to ourselves. It harms us or others and serves as a clear obstacle to our spiritual progress. This applies to the other precepts as well. Haha, not to lie. The fourth precept. Speech here refers to all kinds of verbal communication, whether it is spoken, written, or expressed through body language. Falsehood covers falsification, distortion, and omission of facts, can also be expanded to include all these types of dishonest acts. Now, this precept overlaps with the other precepts because we will lie to cover up wrong deeds of stealing, killing, and sexual misconduct. Making sure that we don't lie actually helps us to refrain from committing other unskillful actions as well, isn't it? Now, perjury here means making false statement under oath. All right. Double dealing here refers to like you act from one set of intentions, but pretending to be motivated by another. So you're actually acting in bad faith. Obscuration here actually means hiding the truth or making the truth so difficult to understand. Eric Hoffer, a moral and social philosopher, said this: "We lie the loudest when we lie to ourselves." Implicit in this fourth precept is also about lying to ourselves. We do it all the time, very often, without even being aware of it. We justify and we rationalize our actions, coming up with explanations that we like and sound reasonable enough to believe. So we will not feel guilty, right, about the unskillful things we have done. We judge, we criticize, and compare others unfavorably against ourselves, because by doing so, we convince ourselves that we are better than others. This is a very subtle form of lying. So whether we consider what we do as skillful or unskillful depends very much on our own perception of what is right and what is wrong, isn't it? So many a times we will bend, stretch, and twist the truth to hide our real motivations. This means we speak some version of the truth, but we leave out or amend certain facts, but not too much, so that we can still see ourselves as honest and morally upright people. Self-honesty is the basis of moral virtue. Know yourself, accept your faults, and work to overcome them. Hide nothing from yourself. Above all, don't lie to yourself. Now, it takes tremendous awareness, even courage, to look at ourselves with this kind of openness and accept what we see. That's why people do not like criticisms. We don't like people to tell us our faults. Okay, because most of the time we don't see them as faults. Now, the Buddha encouraged people to have a clear awareness of the truth at every stage of the spiritual practice. Because if we cannot be honest with ourselves and we habitually justify our unskillful actions, how are we able to identify the truth that is Dharma? How do you get your insight, your fruition, when we are finally facing it? An essential part of training in morality is becoming more honest with ourselves. Last precept. Now, this fifth precept in abstinence from intoxicants, it will include recreational drugs. 4 main types of alcoholic drinks are mentioned in the Tipitaka. All right, we have Sura, which is actually brewed from flour or rice. Maria, brewed from sugar or fruit. Maji, from honey. And Asava, from the juice of a palm, the wild palm date. Alcohol clouds the mind, which goes against our practice to develop a mind that is clear, calm, and steady. In the Sigalowata Sutta, the Buddha pointed out 6 dangers of drinking alcohol. All right. Number 1, loss of wealth. We all know, right, that liquor is not cheap. In fact, the liquor shown in this picture all cost in total about 300,000. Some limited products. Now, drinking leads to heedlessness, right? Which means less restraint over speech and action, which in turn leads to more quarrels and abuse. We don't like to be drunk, but we like to see other people drunk, right? Because they really behave funny. And here, number 3, drinking can cause health problems and accidents. 4 and 5, it can earn you a bad reputation, especially when you make a fool of yourself when drunk. And number 6, of course, it can cause brain damage, leading to impaired intelligence. I have to say too, it leads to a lot of damage to all your organs, especially the direct causation, immediate causation is the liver aging, liver hardening. This is why, this is what is shown in the Sigalowata Sutta. This 5th precept, the most difficult to observe for many people, may appear to deal mostly with self. After all, when we consume intoxicants and recreational drugs, we are only harming ourselves and not others, right? So what is the big deal? Let's see what the Buddha said. Bhikkhus, what do you think? Have you ever seen or heard that when a person abandons and abstains from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness, kings have him arrested on the charge of so abstaining and then execute him, imprison him, banish him, or do with him as the occasion demands? Surely not, Bhante. Good bhikkhus, I too have not seen or heard of such a thing, but rather it is when they inform kings of his evil deed, saying, okay, can I have some volunteer to read the next slide? Siu Yi or Sok Hun?
Okay.
Okay.
This person, under the influence of liquor, wine, and intoxicants, has taken the life of a woman or a man, or he has stolen something from a village or a forest, or he has committed misconduct with someone else's women and girls, or he has ruined a householder or a householder's son with false speech, that kings have him arrested on the charge of using liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness, and then execute him, imprison him, banish him, or do with him as the occasion demands.
So what the Buddha is saying here is that the violation of this precept can lead to heedlessness, which then leads to the violation of the other precepts and cause harm to others. The only precept you may not violate is the fourth one. Remember? Telling lies. Because drunk people have no filter and they say what comes to their mind, which is usually the truth. But even if it is the truth, it will not be right speech, because right speech has to be true, beneficial, gentle, timely, and conveyed with loving kindness. And when you're drunk, you can't do all these. The Buddha told his lay followers not to trade in intoxicants under his teachings on right livelihood. However, a person engaged in this trade, for example, right, the wine seller, the bartender, the waiter and waitress working in the bar, can deny wanting to harm others, but he cannot deny that he is fully aware that the intoxicant he sells, serves, supports directly or indirectly in trade can cause heedlessness, which can lead a person to break the other precepts. This is what makes the trade of intoxicants so unwholesome. Even if the person does not commit these unskillful actions after consuming alcohol, he can no longer maintain wise attention to his thoughts, speech, and actions. So his moral judgment is impaired. So with this knowledge, how can a person trading in intoxicants have truly wholesome intentions? The Buddha taught that upholding these 5 precepts is a full-time moral obligation for lay people. These precepts are simply training tools. All right? They serve as moral reminders. They should not be used to judge and condemn others. Now, what happened? What about the 8 and 10 precepts? Okay, the practice of the 8 and the 10 precepts goes back to the time of the Buddha. Okay, Sakhun?
Bhikkhus, observe complete in 8 factors. The Uposatha is of great fruit and benefit, extraordinarily brilliant and pervasive. And how is the Uposatha observed complete in 8 factors? So that it is of great fruit and benefit, extraordinarily brilliant and pervasive.
Okay, so the 8 factors refer to the 8 precepts which are observed on Uposatha days. How are the changes made when we move from the 5 precepts to the 8 precepts? Okay, now the code of the 8 precepts includes these 5 precepts with one exception. Okay, the 3rd precept is replaced by the training rule to abstain from incelibacy. That means for 8 preceptors, no sexual intercourse at all. The 3 additional precepts are these. Sui, you read?
I undertake the training rule to refrain from taking food at inappropriate times. I undertake the training rule to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment. And I undertake the training rule to refrain from lying on a high and luxurious sleeping place.
Okay, so let's say in strict adherence to the rules, when it comes to meals, with 1 meal a day. But in most meditation retreats, there are 2 meals provided and no food is given afternoon. But food items like honey, chocolate, tea, coffee, fruit juices, and medical herbs are allowed afternoon to maintain strength. These 8 precepts have been modified over the years. In some situations, the 8th precept, all right, deals with abstinence from wrong livelihood. All right, this is the one. Right. Next, when is Uposatha? The Upasata are the days of the full moon, the 2 quarter moons and the new moon of each month. The full moon and the new moon Upasata days are commonly observed, especially by the 8 lay people. Sui?
Therefore, a virtuous woman or man having observed the Upasata in the 8 factors and having made merit productive of happiness goes blameless to a heavenly state.
So on these days, the Buddha encouraged lay Buddhists to pay homage to the parents, exercise sense restraint, do good, spend time in quiet contemplation, and abide by the 8 precepts. Now, it is common for lay people to observe these 8 precepts during meditation retreats. For monastics, these are often days of more intensive reflection and meditation. Confession and recitation of the Patimokkha take place fortnightly on new moon and full moon days. Of the 4 moon phases, the full moon is the most important upasata. Okay. All right, you can take a time to read this. Here are the full moon upasatas that are commonly observed. Now, what is Sangha Day? Sangha Day commemorates the assembly of 1,250 arahants, where the Buddha gave a summary of the salient points of his teachings. Dhamma Day is in July. It commemorates the Buddha's first discourse. And Pavarana Day marks the end of the rains retreat. And the Kathina ceremony is then held the following months, during which the lay people do dana to the Sangha. The 10 precepts here are observed by novice monks and nuns, a samanera. Okay? They are derived from the 8 precepts by splitting the 7 precepts into 2 parts. Okay? By adding 1 rule, which is prohibiting the handling of money. And that's how you get the 10 precepts. Okay. Next, let's look at the 10 wholesome courses of action. Like the 5 precepts, there are many alternative names for these 10 qualities in the suttas. And there are also many passages where they are listed without a heading. Okay, this is the Tipitaka. Okay, and if for those of you who have studied Dhamma for a long time, you know that in it comes to many pages. And the Thai Tipitaka is about 22,000 pages. Now, the section in the Pali Canon that contains the longest description of these qualities on the precepts, on the 10 qualities, is in the Numbered Discourses, Anguttara Nikaya. Here will be the reference. These 10 wholesome courses of action includes physical conduct, 1 to 3, verbal conduct, and mental conduct. Number 1 to 7 deal primarily with morality, which is verbal and physical conduct. Sometimes the Buddha reformat the training rules to make it even simpler. Here, he set down a sequence of 3 basic principles referred to as the basis of meritorious action. Okay? Based on these suttas, later texts and commentaries have expanded these 3 qualities to these 10. Okay? 6 by extension. Right? 7 can be included under dana. 9 also comes under giving. Okay? Right? Paying respects. Number 4 is paying respect and reverence to the triple gem, to parents and elders, to teachers and to others leading virtuous life. 5 is volunteering Number 5 here, service is volunteering in old folks' homes or animal shelters, distributing food to the needy, doing kapiya duties. All right. And number 8 and number 10, all right, these come under bhavana. And number 8 can also be sila. So for lay people, these 3 themes apply. So how are these 3 schemes related to one another? And where do they fit in the Noble Eightfold Path? Let's see how these 10 actions correspond to the 3 disciplines in the Noble Eightfold Path. First 7 factors would be sila. The 10th factor is clearly panya. These 3 factors are part of concentration, as they are free of at least 3 hindrances, right? Of sense desires, ill will, hatred, and doubt. 8th and 9th can also be included under wisdom, as the intention to be free from covetousness, which is greed, and ill will, comes under right intention. And the 3 bases of meritorious action. The training emphasis is on how a person should deal with material possessions and how he engages with society. The training therefore aims to develop generosity, which is more sila. Mental cultivation is similar to mental conduct, all right, in the 10 wholesome courses of action, and therefore refers more to concentration and wisdom. And the 5 precepts deal primarily with morality. That is why of these 3 themes, the 5 precept is always the one associated with morality. What you see here are ways of reclassifying the threefold training of morality, concentration, and wisdom, depending on the situation and the type of audience the Buddha had. Let's move on to a very well-known sutta on morality. Sok Hun.
Householder's son, a noble disciple gives up 4 corrupt deeds, doesn't do bad deeds on 4 grounds, and avoids 6 drains on wealth. When they've left these 14 bad things behind, they have the 6 quarters covered.
So in the Sigalowata Sutta, the Buddha came across a youth called Sigala, who was worshipping the 6 directions as ordered by his late father. All right, then the Buddha then taught him to avoid 14 evils. First, before revering the 6 directions. Then the Buddha moved on to the domestic and social commitments of the householder as represented by these 6 directions. All right. You can see here the 14 evils. All right. He also set up the duties. You can read this sutta on your own, where the Buddha talks about the relationship between these classes of people. The Buddha sometimes refers to the pure ones as the Brahmins. Right? If you see reference to the pure ones, they refer to the priests. Now, the Buddha Gosa calls this sutta the Vinaya of the householder because it has the most detailed do's and don'ts of moral conduct found in the Pali Canon. So this sutta is also called the layman's code of conduct. Okay, even governs master to servants and employees, servants and employees to master. Okay, you can go and read up on your own. Person to aesthetic Brahmins, aesthetic to Brahmins to person. Okay, can I move on? Okay. The other well-known discourse is the Mahamangala Sutta, where the Buddha gave 33 great blessings in life, which comes from practice in avoiding evil, doing good, and purifying the mind. Okay. The first 7 stanzas relate all to morality. Okay. All right, I finished number 1. Let's move on to the second part. The Buddha's teachings follows a structure that is the same as that of all the previous Buddhas. The teachings of all Buddhas is avoid evil, do good, and purifying the mind. Avoiding evil means you abstain from unskillful mental, verbal, and physical actions. Doing good means cultivating wholesome states of mind and performing skillful actions. Purifying the mind means training the mind to see the true nature of conditioned states, and through direct experience, realize impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Apart from this Dhammapada verse, these 3 lines may not be explicitly mentioned anywhere else, but they are all weaved into the Buddha's teachings. Why does the Buddha teach restraint of unskillful actions before the cultivation of skillful ones? The first reason for avoiding evil to come first is specificity of action. What does this mean? In doing good, the methods of practice are limitless and vary according to time and place. Okay? Unskillful actions, on the other hand, can be strictly defined. For example, to abstain from taking what is not given is something that every person can do. If it is not given, don't take. It's then simple. But we have seen from the Dhamma Bites on Dana that giving is not that straightforward. The quality of giving depends on the giver, the gift, and the recipient. To get the most out of the act of giving, all right, we need to have all these qualities. So even if you have no opportunity to give, abstinence itself is a training in morality and sufficient for the concentration practice. Doing good by giving ennobles the mind further and helps prevent the person from being possessive and uncaring. The second reason is abstinence will lead from the freedom from guilt and remorse. You need to have a clear conscience, the sense of right and wrong that prevents us from committing unskillful actions. When we behave unskillfully, there is a sense of shame, self-aversion, guilt, anxiety, remorse. Only sociopaths and psychopaths do not feel this way. Now, sociopaths have antisocial personality disorder, so they don't have a very good sense of what is right and wrong, and they cannot therefore empathize with others, and they do not feel any remorse over any wrongdoing. But most of us are not like this. Okay, the Buddha tells Ananda the importance of this freedom from remorse. Sui can read.
Thus, Ananda, the purpose and benefit of wholesome, virtuous behavior is non-regret. The purpose and benefit of non-regret is joy. Rapture, tranquility, pleasure, concentration, knowledge and vision of the way things are, disenchantment and dispassion, knowledge and vision of liberation. Thus, Ananda, wholesome, virtuous behavior progressively leads to the foremost.
Okay, in essence, freedom from remorse leads to happiness. Happiness leads to concentration. And then concentration, the mind, that calm, still mind, brings wisdom. What you see here is the progression from morality to concentration to wisdom. This leads us to the third reason why abstinence from wrongdoing should come first. Okay, spiritual progression. Asui, please read.
These days, people are going all over the place looking for merit, and they always seem to stop over in Wat Pat Pong. If they don't stop over on their way out, they do so on the return trip. And some people are in such a hurry, I don't even get a chance to see or speak to them. Most of them are looking for merit. I don't see many looking for a way out of wrongdoing. They're so intent on getting merit, they don't know where they're going to put it. It's like trying to dye a dirty, unwashed cloth.
This quote is by Ajahn Chah. Tells us very clearly what we have to do to start with first. Avoid evil first. It's the most basic form of training. To take responsibility for one's own mind first, to guard against all sorts of harming self and others. Only when a person has established this basic purity of mind, then personal responsibility expands outwards to the cultivation of wholesome deeds. The standard definitions for right speech, right action, and right livelihood always deals with abstinence first. Take divisive speech, for instance. Sui?
Having abandoned divisive speech, he abstains from divisive speech. Having heard something here, he does not repeat it elsewhere in order to divide those people from these, or having heard something elsewhere, he does not repeat it to these people in order to divide them from those.
So the standard definition for divisive speech and other forms of right speech deals with restraint. So, right, we don't end up translating unwholesome thoughts into speech and other types of verbal communication. Okay, Sui, move on.
Thus, he is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of unity, who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord.
And you see, right, what comes next is the doing good part. The Buddha said that right speech is one that is true. Again, right speech is one that is true, beneficial, gentle, timely, and performed with loving kindness. Now, difficult to do that when we have not let go of unwholesome states first, right? In summary, there is a personal responsibility not to harm self and others, and the social ability to contribute towards others' well-being and happiness. We can only do this effectively if we avoid evil first before doing good. We can, of course, train in both areas at the same time, but focus first should be avoiding evil. Restrain, hold back. Avoiding evil and doing good fall mainly in the domain of morality, which is sila. Okay. The next we will go on to number 3. I think we'll cover that next week. All right. So this is the end of part 1.